I want to say hello to everybody. This is Renee Dinnerstein, and this is a very unusual conversation on my blog today. Usually, I'm talking with people about children and play, but today, this is quite exciting because I'm speaking with 4 young actors and theater students who are studying in London at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. This came about because I was speaking with my daughter about these conversations that I've been having with different people on my blog. And she said, oh, you should speak with Adrian and his friends at the school because they're doing a lot of playing. They're actually playing quite a bit. And I thought it was a little strange. And I thought, no, I can't do that. But that doesn't make sense. But then Adrian told me something, I think the last time I spoke with him, about how, I know I might be getting it a little bit wrong, but about how one of his teachers gave an idea for a script, I think I'm getting it right, to the students, but asked them to play around with it first to kind of tease something out of this. I might be getting it wrong, and maybe Adrian will speak to this afterwards, but it did make me think about how much actually playing might come into the life of an actor and a young actor. But let me let everybody introduce themselves, okay? So I'll start with Ksenia.
Yeah, so my name is Ksenia Elinson, and I am 20 years old. I'm from Russia, and I've moved to London 2 years ago to start the course at Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. That's it.
Has it been a good experience?
It's been lovely. It's been lovely.
Yeah. And Seb?
Right. So my name is Sebastian. I am 23 years old. I'm Peruvian. And as Ksenia, I moved 2 years ago to London. I've lived and trained in Madrid before and in Peru. And yeah, it's interesting. It's been a complete different experience in the loveliest way possible.
That's why. Do you want me to call you Sebastian, or Adrian has referred to you as Seb, so I'm not sure.
Everybody calls me Seb, so that's fine. It's easier.
Okay, all right. And Omer.
Yeah, my name is Omer. I'm 25 and I'm from Turkey. I've been here in the UK for 6 years now.
Yeah. Have you been at the school all that time? Or?
So, no, I worked as a waiter, and when I first came here, I couldn't speak English at all. So this time I started learning English and earned some money, and then auditioned for drama school. And hopefully, it went well. So I started studying.
I am amazed at how well you're speaking English. I'm studying Italian with a teacher from Milan, and oh no, I don't speak like that at all. And Adrian.
Yeah, I'm Renee's grandson, and I'm 19 years old, and I'm from Brooklyn, New York. And like Seb and Ksenia, I moved to London 2 years ago, and it's been fun.
Okay, well, Adrian, do you know what I was just talking about? And maybe you can explain it a little bit more, because I don't think I did a good job of explaining it.
So we did this play called The Busybody a few weeks ago, which is a comedy of manners. So it's a pretty, I don't know, it's like an old comedy. Maybe somebody else could explain better what that means. But we only had 2 weeks to put it on its feet. And so at the beginning of the process, the director, Ali, said to us, look, we don't have time to get subtle with it. So for every scene, I'm going to give you a game. And when you do the scene, you're going to play the game. And that's that. And I'm sure the others can say more about it, but it was awesome. And it ended up being really quite a good play, I'd say.
Anyone want to add to that at all? I don't know what Adrian meant by a game.
I think I can explain it a little bit better. So I think she meant in every scene there is something that's happening, and there's gonna be like a few terms that are very like theater terms. Like I don't know, there are two characters, and one of them is pushing and one of them is pulling. Like there's tension. Imagine there's like a, I don't know, string or a stick in between two characters and the way they affect each other. And so in some scenes, you would play the game of pushing and pulling. So the characters always affect each other. So like either two characters are trying to be closer to each other, or two characters are trying to be further from each other, or one character wants to be close when the other one wants to run away or whatever. So this relationship of push and pull. And for example, for that specific project, if your game was push and pull, then you would have that in mind whilst you're doing the scene. So there's always be one person affecting the other more and the other responding to that or whatever. And I know that I'm giving this example because that's what I was playing with. I don't know what other people were playing with, but I'm sure like in every scene, there was a different game that could be created. I'm sure everybody else can share their games.
Right. So I'm curious. You all came from very different cultures, obviously, and I'm wondering, since I was an early childhood teacher, and so much of what I write about has to do with children. In fact, the blog that I started it because when I came out of the classroom and was no longer teaching my own class and went out to help teachers who, to be a support for other teachers, I was really taken aback to see the lack of play taking place in early childhood classrooms, not just in New York, because I traveled out of New York, but around the country. And so that was the impetus for starting my blog. It's been a fight, an uphill fight all along, because there's a real push to take play out of childhood, quite truthfully. And I'm wondering what school was like for you when you were young. When I say young, I mean like 5, 6, 7 years old, right? Like the very academic years. And was there any play, and did you play, like what kind of playing did you do at that age? I'm wondering, Sebastian, if I asked you that, what would be your thoughts?
Yeah, at that age, I've moved a lot. So even during that period, I was living in different cities, but all the schools that I've been in, when I was a kid at least, were very academic, very focused on, were very small and focused on what it is academics. There was no much room for going around doing stuff, but there was, in both of the ones that I'm thinking about right now, there was a lot of emphasis on culture, in the sense of music, theater in a way, and dance. Dance is a huge thing in Peru. Like almost every school teaches you to dance until you are 16, 17. So, but not in a game way. It's still an academic thing, but you must do it. But playing was a big thing in my life, outside of school. Like I always, I had like a box full of costumes and so many. I would just play all the time, afternoon, nights. It's ridiculous how much I would play. And as well, I wasn't, because there were so few boys. I spent lots of time with girls while I was a kid. I wouldn't go to play football because I didn't like it. And I would just play like hide and seek. I would jump the rope. I would do all the stuff, all the kind of games instead of just playing sports.
Right.
Which I did as well, but not the boys' sports. So, yeah, it was kind of a mix between both academic and games, I guess.
Right. I like that box of costumes that you talk about. That's a wonderful thing to have, and it seems like maybe there's some connection to what you're doing now to what you were doing then, right?
Yeah. It also helps. Sorry, my mom was one of the most moms in which every summer she would just basically fill my schedule with all sorts of things. But one time when I was 5, when I was 4, she put me in a theatre workshop, in an acting workshop for the first time. For her, it was just like a way for me to be more social, although I already was. But like that was the beginning of this downhill of becoming an actor.
Downhill? I think it's uphill. Omer, what would you say about that if you were reflecting back on your childhood?
Well, I think the ages that you're describing are kind of early ages that we don't go to school in Turkey. We start at 7.
Okay.
But the games are really important for, I mean, well, so I grew up in a city called Istanbul, where it's quite metropolitan, but there's no system in it. So there's no planning or anything like that. So every single field they find, they want to build really high, big buildings to make money out of that. So the city itself has got no space, no fields for children to play. So what we could do when I was little, playing games in every single space we find. So it was really challenging. And it was also, we were making lots of noises and disturbing adults, and adults would get really, really angry because some houses would have some sick people in it. Some houses got some people with less patience and everything like that. So adults were really, really angry. So that made us play games in a way that we also try to make it not in silence, but we had to keep it kind of, we had to decrease the amount of fun we had or decrease the amount of noise we could do, or things like that. So it affected quite a lot. Another thing, when Seb was speaking about, playing with girls, boys at the same time. So I think that was a big difference where we can't really play with girls. So we had to play with boys all the time. The reason for that was, I think the parents would not really allow us to play with girls or girls to play with boys. So for example, when we tried to play with each other, one of a girl's parents would come and say, you can't, you're not allowed to, this is not right, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be playing with boys, so we grew up with playing with boys all the time. So girls grew up with playing with girls all the time. So yeah, so I think amount of field we had was really, really limited.
Yeah.
And amount of variety we had was quite low as well, I think.
Do you think that's been changing at all, or you think it stayed the same?
I think it is changing. It is changing for the big cities of Turkey, but for the rural places, I don't think it is changing. Mentality is the same because there's no education.
Right.
But for the big cities, the education is growing and improving. So people are reading more, people are hearing more, social media and all that. So if something happens, people talk loudly in social media. So everyone's got social media right now. They read about that. They try to change their mentality according to those news. But yeah, I think, Renee, I guess it can be a bad thing where you got limitations, but it actually can be a good thing in terms of creativity. Now you have to come up with lots of different games. You have to fit your games in different circumstances.
That's very interesting what you're saying. I think there's a big point to that. But one thing I did want to add to what you're saying is that at the beginning of this lockdown of the pandemic, I didn't know what to do with myself because I wasn't working at all. And I was feeling rather helpless, like useless, not helpless, but useless. And so I put something on Facebook saying, would anybody like to join me in talking about choice, time, and play? And I thought maybe 10 people might sign up, 100 people. And some teachers from Turkey also got into this conversation. And we met for 3 weeks. And it was really fascinating because it was from like all over the world. I mean, I had to do it twice. I had to do it twice a day because of the different time slots. And so it is interesting because there are teachers there who really want to find out more about how to bring play to early childhood. So,
There's one other thing I'd like to add is that I don't know if Seb or Ksenia or Adrian, you guys realized it as well. So when you're in your country growing up and someone is introducing this game to you, or you learn it in school anyway, so then you come into Central, that we play games, and you go like, I already know this game, but where you know this game from is just like Turkey or Peru or Russia, and then some of the games are really, really different. You just go like, I have no idea what that is or how this one works, or you never played even similar games to that. Right. Sometimes really interesting, but sometimes I know this game, so isn't it interesting? Like, yeah, exactly. It's just, I find it really interesting because like the distance is just huge, but those people, those children are playing the same game at the same time.
Yes, well, these games where they clap hands like that, I mean, it's been documented. It's like all over the world, children have different kinds of hand clap games that they do. Sandy, what about you? What about in Russia?
I just realized until you asked this, I've not thought of this ever. So this is very interesting. And I think Mayor is saying that in different countries, different games, and in some countries, I think me and Omer, we grew up although in different countries, but we have a lot of similarities in the upbringing. I think a lot of the games that I was raised playing, Omer, I think you played them as well, which was really interesting finding out when we came to Central. But, games weren't a part of the education in any way whatsoever. Like, if anything, it was frowned upon. The only times, and we still played a lot of games, but we would either do it after school or we would get in a lot of trouble doing it during school.
Right.
And we would play every day, but we would always get in trouble and we would always be told off for being too loud or for being unprofessional in the school environment, although we were only 6 or 7. But I think it's because in Russia, especially back then, schools was so, even when it wasn't academical, the expectation was that now we're getting serious, now you wear a uniform, now you show up on time, now you work really hard. And playing games was seen as almost disrespectful to the teachers. But we would still play games every break we had. And I'm thinking about it, we didn't have anything to play games with. All we had was like a bit of space and 2 walls, and we would create 10 different games using floor and 2 walls. The imagination we had back then was amazing. I think when I think of games in my childhood, it was always, always, always unsupervised. So we would only feel comfortable playing games the way we wanted to when there was no adults watching over us. And then we would play so many games. And it was really lovely. There was a school just across the road from my school. So there was 2 schools across each other and just like playing space in between, like a football field. And so the 2 schools after school or between like breaks would get together and play games against each other. And that was something I really remember. Like that was really, really lovely.
How old were you when you started school in Russia?
I was 7.
Oh,
so it's a bit older than what you're asking, but it's because we do start school at 7 rather than before.
So you didn't go to like a nursery school or preschool?
No. So what we have kindergarten, but it's not compulsory.
I see.
You would usually, I did go, But if I'm being honest, I can't even remember that much. I remember we did play games, but again, it feels like it was more academical even back then. Like I remember we had English that was compulsory, but nobody taught it properly. Like nobody's ever learned English from kindergarten, but it was compulsory. I remember sitting down and learning the alphabet. And I remember that we would go outside and play games for like an hour. But it was always like, if you're too loud, that's bad. If you're running around too much, that's bad. But all the games require being quite loud and active and running. So it was a bit weird.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Adrian, what's your memories?
Oh, well, I think that first of all, probably most of your readers will know like an example of my background with a young child education system. But the one thing which did stand out to me was when Seb said that he mostly played with girls. And it was the same exact thing for me. I remember like being in like the make pretend part of pre-K where like you could do something and there was one section where you could play pretend. And I remember pretty distinctly only playing with girls, which is really quite interesting because I mean, to me, I'm open to being wrong about this, but to me, that seems like it's instilled in children pretty young, that difference between girls do this, boys do that. And we were like 6, because there's nothing naturally in men and women or whoever which makes you more attracted to playing with your imagination or not. So it's funny that that through across the world already so quickly they establish that in you, that boys do that and girls do that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, a few things. One is as somebody who watched you every Tuesday and called for you at school, I remember that the teacher would tell me, we cannot get him to play in anything other than the dramatic play section. Can't get him, and we want him to try other things, but he absolutely refuses, and he cries when we ask him to. Can I show that picture? Are you doing? So I found this picture of when I once went to call for Adrian, and I had to drag him at a dramatic play, and it's the baker. Yeah, so that and the other thing that comes to mind is something that I actually just wrote about in my blog. If you go back, if you ever want to read my blog and read the last post, but it had to do with a baby study that was done in a public school, and about what happened when multiracial dolls were introduced to the children as their adopted babies. And it's a pretty dramatic post, and what happened was actually quite disturbing and eye-opening. But one of the things that happened was that each child adopted a baby doll that they got to keep. And the next year, when they went into first grade, the first grade teacher told the children who had been in this particular kindergarten class, if they wanted to, they could bring their baby dolls to school. And there were 8 children from that class. 7 of them brought their dolls in, and 1 didn't. And she asked him, why didn't you bring your doll in? And he said his grandmother threw it away because boys don't play with dolls. So, I mean, that has not gone away. And I mean, this is an immigrant culture too. So that's a part of it, but when you were also talking about games, it made me think about, I have this book that I wrote, Joyce Time, How to Deepen Learning Through Inquiry and Play. Okay, and it's for teachers. And the book was translated into Mandarin. And when it was being translated, they wanted to say how to deepen learning through inquiry and games. And I didn't want the word games there because to me, games signify something else. Now, I could be wrong, but games signified something with rules. You have rules when you play a game. You're playing checkers, this is what you do. You're playing tag, this is what you do. There are the rules, And when I think of play, the children make up they make up whatever it is they want to do. That's what play is for me. So that was a, they finally found a word. They had to look in Mandarin and try to find a word that would signify play. But I wanted to read something to you and then talk about the different. This is from my book, all right? So in my book, I have two kinds of play, all right? The first kind is free play, all right? Ksenia, when you talked about being out in the schoolyard, that's I was thinking of that. It's spontaneous, all right? It's filled with make-believe and the fantasies of childhood, and there's no adult intervention at all. It's only children. Children do it. There's no adult there. You may be, out in the schoolyard, you may be who knows where, but the adults have nothing to do with it. It's only the children or whoever is doing it. Animals play, everybody plays. I actually read something that said that every animal in the world plays except for ants. They work. Interesting, right? But then there's another kind of play, which is basically the kind of play that I'm writing, that I wrote about in my book, which is guided play. And in guided play, the teacher sets up play environments like a block center, a dramatic play center, a center with different kinds of art materials. So it's not there willy-nilly. The teacher has set up these areas, but when the children go to these areas, nobody tells them what to do. It's still up to them. It's play, and so it's up to them, So Adrian, when you were talking about and when you all were talking about what you did when you were getting ready for this play that you did recently, that sounded sort of like guided play, right? Because there was something that had been set up and then something that you made up yourself within that. All right. I mean, you had some guidelines, but it was basically you discovered it. Okay. So anyway, I was looking at what some other people wrote about play, and I had a few quotes, and I thought maybe this would spark some thinking in you, and I'm curious to, all right, what do you think about it? So this was something that Ralph Waldo Emerson said. He said, "It is a happy talent to know how to play." All right. Carl Jung said, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct." This is one that I particularly like. Nietzsche said, "In every real man is a child. A child is hidden that wants to play." Right? So play is inside. And then Jean Piaget, who was a Swiss educational philosopher, he wrote, and he was very important in the development of thinking about young children. If you want to be creative, stay in part a child with the creativity and invention that characterizes children before they are deformed by adult society. Okay, so these all made me think about your lives, right? And what you're doing now and what's ahead of you. And I'm wondering if any of that stood out to you, or if it provoked any thinking in you.
Yeah, what you mentioned in your book, the difference between guided play and free play, and actually it's just a question that I'm having right now. What's the difference between free play and just being? Because I guess, at least in my head, trying to look back on the costumes and all of that, yes, there was no adult supervision, and there was a period of time in my life in which I was living in I don't know how to call it in English. It's a camp, like a closed living space in the middle of nowhere. So literally, our parents didn't have to worry about us at all. So we would be free to just go anywhere. It was like ridiculous. And so So there was no adult supervision at all. But like subconsciously, we would make up our own rules, I think, in a way, always towards something. And I think that's why we use games, guided games, sort of in the theater, but like looking towards an objective. Although when we were kids, I don't actually think there was an actual objective except the process itself. So that I'm still curious about what would be the difference of that playing alone, while the rules are still in your head, created by you, and still moving from being.
I'm just living, you mean?
Yeah, just living. That's just.
Sorry, I it's just something popped in my head when you're talking. I mean, I feel like in terms of just being, there are rules to just being as well. Like there's always rules. Like I can't punch through the wall right now. I know that if I punch the wall, what's going to happen is that I'm going to make a dent and I'm going to hurt my hand, and I might not make a dent. And with everything there are rules. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that there.
Yeah, I was thinking the same. Also, quickly said, you said when we play and we use it for theater, we have an objective. I think even back then as kids, we had an objective. It was just different. It could have been, I don't know, doing something together, getting closer, having fun. I think at the core of playing games is doing things together and having fun together. And I think when we grow up, it changes to having meals together, cooking together. I don't know, things like this. I think it's the same. I think it's experiencing togetherness.
That's so interesting, because don't you think about this year when children are not having the opportunity to be together with each other? Okay. And, you know, they're so isolated this year. And so I, as an educator, and I have concerns about what's going to happen next year for them, especially the younger children, particularly. Well, for all children, you know, it's been very hard on teenagers, you know, who are so social and all that, but who are missing out on the incredibly social part of playing together. You know, like that's it. It's very social. Yeah.
We want to touch on something because what Ksenia said was very interesting. I think now it's a way of getting together that has evolved. I think it's a way of, as you said, getting to know each other, at least, or no, I don't know if that was in my head. It's just that I work part-time doing parties with kids. Like I just come from a party for a 5-year-olds. Usually like there's 15 little humans playing with you. I was dressed as Spider-Man, but like someone would start tapping and then everybody would start tapping and they just like created a game in 2 seconds.
Right.
And that's their way of interacting with each other. It's like not even like completely verbal in a way, but it's a primitive form of communication, and primitive is not the way, just different, I guess. Or yeah.
Omir, did you want to say something to that?
Yeah, I was thinking about rules and how that affects the level of creativity we have as, I don't know, directors, actors, or writers, or people like that. So the other day I was talking to my roommate Jason. He when it was 2:00 in the morning, he suddenly got an inspiration and started to write something, a scene. And I read the scene, and it was really, really good. And he was talking about how if someone or something pushed him to do that, he wouldn't want to do that, or he wouldn't create that thing. Suddenly he was just feeling it and started to type it, which is really, really good. And at the same time, I remember we had this workshop. Our devising teacher, Yael, invited one professional writer to our building, and he gave us this workshop about writing, and he talked about the industry and all that. He gave us this writing exercise where he said, think about one individual and one common, think about one individual and one common issues, and then find one a common issue that, you know, that would be everyone's issue in the world, like climate change or racism or things like that, big major issues. And then he would say, well, now think about, in terms of being relative, it should be going from less relative to the most relative, and think about 10 different places from 1 to 10 and write about those. One is, for example, I'm going to talk about climate change. So one for me is a desert, is getting dry. So this is the most relative to me. And the 10th is a nightclub. Is not seen relative, but is actually can go there. And then I realized I felt really creative within the rules. So I think there's no specific, I don't think there's a specific answer to that. It is in terms of being creative in our kind of directing, writing, or being an actor. Some people really work really good with the structure, with the rules, and some people work really good without thinking or pushing themselves, or without any structure around them. So
that's an interesting point, but I think just to kind of respond to that, right? I think that's very true, you know, and that's why, like when I speak to teachers, I think just saying to children, okay, it's your room, go play, you know, that's not enough, you know, in the classroom. I don't think so in any case, you know, but I think that different people respond in different ways, you know, and I think the thing is, when that structure that you were talking about allows for inspiration within it, all right, doesn't tell you everything that you have to do, all right. That's the big point for me, is that yes, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 to 10, but within that, you're thinking, you're thinking of what you want to do. You know, there was a child psychiatrist who I spoke with on my blog recently, who said that in his clinic, they now have a new diagnosis for young children, which is play deprived. Can you imagine that? That children are considered, they have an illness that is a play deprivation, where they haven't been given any opportunity to do that kind of thinking at all. Everything has been structured out for them, you know. So I think that's kind of interesting.
No, Renee, I'd like to tell you something before. I don't know if it's relevant or not, but before this, I prepared something little for you. If I don't know if that'd be helpful or not, but like, what are the benefits of playing games for actors?
Yes, I'd love to hear that. Yes.
I'd like to share my screen, but I don't think I can, because I'm not.
Do I have to do something so you can share it? Let's see. Adrian, help me. What do I do?
You should click on participants, maybe.
Oh, participants? No. Okay, let me get out of this. Wait, I do everything wrong here. Right, let me get rid of this.
If you see my
Omer, and now I see where it says more. Is that it?
So there's one option where, can you see my square on the right top? You can see three dots. If you click on it, you can make me admin there.
Let's see. I'm clicking, and now I make you. What am I doing for you? Make host?
Yes.
Make host. Okay. I'm changing the host. I'm not a host anymore, right? Now you're the host?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. You're a host.
So can you see my screen?
Yes. Yep.
So yeah, this is a kind of rough plan of what I'm going to talk about right now. But I wanted to go from the benefits to the individuals first, then to the group, to an ensemble or cast members. So first, the things that we get benefit as individuals from the games that we play during the rehearsals or during the process. So the first one is about the games that we play are bringing us the present, which is really, really important for actors, because everyone would agree, I think being present is so important for being listening all the time, being in the moment, and being reactive to the things that you receive from your partner, from other, outside, or all energies and everything. So it's really important. So it lit to senses. So the games that we've been introduced over the last 2 years are activating all of our senses: hearing, touching, smell, all of that we activated, and we improved the level of our capacities with activating our senses. And preparation is really important, because you were also talking about that, where you walked into the room and they expect you to do something which you're not familiar with, the emotions that they want you to feel, circumstances that they want you to be in, or the situations are not familiar to you. So you need to prepare yourself for these emotions, for these. So that's why Adrian said to you, and you wanted to share with us about our rehearsal process, where the scenes, every single scene got their own energy. They got their own kind of dynamic within that. So, and what we're having right now, just walking into the room, are not matching. So we need to prepare ourselves for those energies. So our director was introducing some games to be able to prepare our inner life and physical life, that we can play, we can perform those scenes better, and activates our imagination individually. It's so important. I remember this triangle game that we've been introduced, one of a technique called, a French guy, Lecoq, came up with this technique, his own technique, where one of its exercises, one person is leading the group, and 3 of them, one person is slightly ahead of 2 other people, and you have to look horizon, you have to look forward without really checking each other. You have to move like that. So every time you turn, the other person is leading. You turn again, the other person. So that game, for example, when we played, we started to see things. We started to create some spaces, create some worlds. So it was really interesting when I taught this game in secondary school in Turkey. When I went back to Turkey, so I was trying to introduce those games that I learned in England, and if they're going to work with Turkish culture and with Turkish kids. And I was seeing, so where there was one group tried this, afterwards we were talking, they were 14, 15-year-old people, and they said, 2 of them, they said they were, during the game they were playing, they started to see same things without talking. So they said they were looking for a box inside the forest. So without talking, just playing the game, they started to see the same place, they started to see the same mission, and they find themselves somewhere else, which is not room. So it activates our imaginations. Dynamic. So group dynamic is really important, because the communication and the level of communication, we need to increase the level of performance in a way that it's going to affect the audience, affect the people. So group dynamic is so important. When we play games, the level of it is increasing. Benjamin Button. This is a bit interesting. It's coming from a feedback that I got when I was in secondary school, where one of my teachers said to me, never lose a child inside you when you're acting. So I didn't get this. I didn't really understand what he meant, but actually what you were saying earlier about being a child all the time, they're really, really good, really old actors, but you can watch them and say, well, they like children. They enjoying it, they've been playful, they just, they like children. Yeah, they got that energy. So as actors, I think we always need that energy, even though we play tragic scenes or dramas, really heavy text. doesn't matter. We need to have that playfulness involving. So I always think about, you were talking about the kids, and I'm always talking about the status in terms of, you know, some people got more money, some people are socially better, some people being more respected than other people, you know, and that creates kind of hierarchy within the group. But when we play games, there's no difference anymore. So everyone is involved, everyone is in the same page, everyone is in the same status, and that's brilliant. And confidence. So this is really important, because where I take this example from when I was a kid, I was playing football. And so I realized soccer, you call it, I guess, Renee. So for example, sometimes during the competition, during the league, some teams are not doing well, and in the middle of the season, they change in their coach. Within 1 or 2 weeks, they start getting good results. They start beating other teams. But then all the people are thinking, so this is the same thing, same players, same team. What happened? They just play games. They play games in a way that they achieve something together. So their coach is making them achieve something together, and it brings the group confidence up. And yeah, the last page, I'm so sorry. Building the trust within the team is really important. We play games that we trust each other more. So for example, we leave our muscles, we leave ourselves, and the other person is holding and things like that. So we trust each other. Communication, as I mentioned before. So as much as we play, we build the communication skills within the group really, really well, in a way that we start not verbally speaking, but we're speaking at the same time. We're communicating without speaking. That's what I'm trying to say. And distractions. This is the last thing I like to talk about, because 2021, we get distracted quite a lot, phones and everything. So I think for acting, we need to be in the moment all the time. Concentration is important, focus is important, but we get distractions all the time from other people, from phones, from news, you know. So playing games is also taking you away from that distractive state. Thank you.
Well, this is so well thought out. It's amazing. Really, I want to steal this. All right. I mean, Sebastian, you know, like, what stood out to you from this? Or
I've been thinking about, obviously, I agree with everything Omer just said, especially the last point, actually, because it's so true. We need to focus, and it's very difficult in this day and age to not multitask, which shouldn't happen when you're in a scene. But like, thinking of everything we've spoken so far, like I was thinking, like, why do we play? Like, why do kids play? Why? Because it's instinctive, it's natural, it will happen. And obviously, I think it's a tool for learning and it's a way for a kid to actually focus and learn anything they need to learn and grow. But that's like with parameters. And when we are playing free playing without parameters, I see it as a way of I think it's just a preparation for those games in which where there are rules and parameters. There's a preparation. It's an expansive.
That's interesting.
Expansiveness of the imagination. Quoting, you know, I love him, Simon McBurney. You smile, I laugh, but he quoted Jack Lecoq. But let's go back to Lecoq then. That what his training and what we do in our training, we did already. It's train the imagination, the muscle of the imagination. And I think that's what free playing does for kids. It allows that muscle to grow. So then you have more options to play when there's rules
Mm.
as well.
This is so interesting, Sebastian. So in a sense, you're saying, maybe I'm wrong, correct me, that the free playing that children do, even that you might be doing, is a preparation for the more complicated types of activities or demands of life, in a sense.
Yeah, I think it opens your view and your mind to many other options, many ways of solving problems. The more creative, the more imagination that you have, you will see more outside of the box and different ways of solving things or going about different things
Right.
for the games and for life as well.
In my book, I have wrote that play is the engine that drives learning. And in a sense, it's kind of what you were saying, you know. Ksenia, I see you going like that.
It's just because it got me thinking. I'll come back in a sec to, I was going to mention something about Omer's presentation, but it got me thinking, you know, I don't know about in schools, but I noticed that ever since I came to drama school, whenever we have a new teacher and we need to learn their name or they need to learn our names, the fastest way to learn each other's names is by playing games.
Mm.
Nobody's going to, and I've only noticed it ever since I've been at drama school. Before that, people just, you know, if it takes me 3 months to remember these people's names, it's fine. But when you come to a drama school, suddenly people play a game and in half an hour like this, they know everyone's names.
Yeah.
And next day they see you and they remember your name. And then 6 months later, they see you and they remember your name because they were playing a game.
Right.
And,
yeah,
you know, it's
that's
what
true.
you're saying. It's an engine. But I was just going to quickly come back to Omer's presentation because I deeply, at my core, believe that you can learn from playing a game everything you need to learn to be an actor, genuinely. Except obviously like accents and things like this. But I think a game teaches you everything you need to know. It teaches you to listen. It teaches you to take risks, follow your instincts. Usually most games have an element of saving each other. So you learn to sacrifice yourself to save other people. You learn this is not about me, this is about the whole group situation. And I think at the very core of acting, at least good acting, there's always a game.
Mm.
It's very interesting.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Adrian, what are you thinking?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of times when you tell people to start acting, they start either trying to describe what people are like and they do too much, or they try and do way too little. And by too little, they like turn off their face. They stop responding and listening to the world the way that we as humans naturally listen to the world. Because as people, I think naturally we're playing a game all the time. We always have an objective, we always have an obstacle, we always have a set of rules. And we're always, even if it isn't fun, we're playing some sort of game. And I think to add on to what Ksenia is saying about how games are the key to all great acting, it's because it's trying to tap into that thing which we're doing all the time. It's trying to find that playfulness which we're embodying all the time in our day-to-day lives, I guess.
Yeah.
I think.
Can I quickly add on to this?
Sure.
Because you said it's like people turn off their facial expressions and they do too little. Every time I think of, you know, when you're on the tube in the morning and it's full of people, you might hear somebody laugh or you might notice something, but you're really not going to react. At least I don't see people react. Everybody's like nothing bothers them, nothing touches them. And I think what partly, as Omer said, playing a game, it takes that cast away. It's like this mask, the social mask you have. And I think what Adrian, you're saying is when people think of acting, they either do too much or they put the social mask back on and they're like, this is what the acceptable way to act in the society is. And yes, playing a game is like, suddenly people get very competitive and somebody's gonna scream and somebody's gonna run and somebody might do something else, and it's unpredictable and unexpected. And I think it's interesting that in society, yes, we are playing a game, but we have to cover the game because it's not an acceptable way to behave for an adult. You can't scream in the street, or I don't know, start singing a song or dancing. You can't do that. Everybody's gonna be, this person is crazy.
And sorry, I just want, now Ksenia's made me think of something. How like we need to open ourselves up, we need to take the mask off, we need to, you know, respond in the crazy way, which we know we all can. I distinctly remember, I think watching a good game is almost better than watching almost any play or any movie. I'll never forget, in the first year of school, we were playing these games, which were literally games of like balancing a space. So like if we like created a square, and if somebody came in on the bottom left corner, somebody had to come in at the top right. And if this person moved here, this person moved here, and you always had to balance the space. And I swear to God, I'm sure the others will back me up, it was literally incredible theater. And that was the moment where it was just like, oh, okay, so theater is just playing a game. And bad theater doesn't play games.
The best example of that, I think, I back you up on that. The best, and I think we said it at that moment, was playing Samurai.
Yeah, definitely.
Because each time we would play this game, which is two blindfolded people trying to kill each other with a newspaper, it was a whole play. You had drama, you had a beginning, you had a conflict, a climax, and an ending. It was a whole thing. Yeah.
A mafia game.
You know, this has really been so fascinating for me. We've been talking a while, and I don't want to hold you up for such a long time. I know you're all, from what I can tell from Adrian, I'm sure all of you are like incredibly busy. But I want to thank you so much for taking time out for this. This has been so interesting, and I hope it was fun for you. And I can't thank you enough. And I'm hoping that by next year I'll be able to go to London and something. You know, I'm ready to go back. You know, I wish you all like so much of the best, and you all have such gorgeous energy in you, and it's very exciting to meet you. And I want to thank you very much, very much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. And probably we'll be playing a game after this.
Oh, okay. And I hope you'll watch yourself on my blog on Zoom. Okay, all my best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.